just over Memorial Day weekend. Well, now we're being told that a person who was there at the same time has tested positive for the coronavirus. Missouri State health managers tell us that person visited the crammed pool at the Backwater Jack's bar, as well as other bars and restaurants over the course of the day. So now they're asking people who were at that same crowded pool to now monitor themselves for COVID-19 symptoms, including fever, cough, as well as shortness of breath.
Now, across the country, and especially in Louisville, 7 people were shot last night in the crowds. Police say they were not the ones responsible for the shootings that happened in the crowds. We're waiting for more information on that. The police out in force tonight across the country.
We're also trying to effort a satellite feed coming in from our nation's capital, where the White House earlier today was on lockdown. We are now hearing that protesters are clashing just outside of the White House with members of the Secret Service. You are looking live once again back in Los Angeles, but unrest across the country, even in D.C.
Yeah, and we're taking the live shot from Los Angeles again. We do want to mention we are monitoring protests here in Phoenix. So far tonight, peaceful. There were 3 scheduled protests at different locations. We're not seeing huge. In Los Angeles, this is the 110. Protesters are shutting down the freeways there. You see the backup there. The protesters actually on the freeway. We don't have control over this live shot. If they were to pull out right now, you would just see the backup that goes for miles. Again, this is the 110 at Wilshire in Los Angeles.
Earlier tonight, these protesters gathered in downtown L.A. at the City Hall. One LAPD officer was injured in a tussle with protesters, and earlier tonight, the entire LAPD police force put on tactical alert for just this situation. We'll continue to monitor these protests happening now across the country. Let's take you back here at home, here in the Valley, in Phoenix. We are seeing a second night of protests. Law enforcement say they're not trying to shut down these protests, but they are encouraging.
Yeah, so where we are right now, we are at East Lake Park in Phoenix, and this is a very peaceful vigil. This is in honor of 28-year-old Dion Johnson. He's an African-American man who died this
because he wasn't violent. My son, they always result in guns because he wasn't violent. My son was asleep.
She's very emotional. It's been a very emotional time. It's been a hard week for her and her family. He has siblings and also a daughter. So what we do know is that there is no known video of the incident. According to Phoenix PD, the involved troopers were not wearing body-worn cameras, so they are asking that if anyone was in the area of where this happened near 101 and Tatum on early Monday morning, they do want to hear from you. Live from Phoenix, I'm Whitney Clark for Arizona's Family.
Okay, Whitney, and we'll continue to monitor.
They do want to hear from you. Live from Phoenix, I'm Whitney Clark for Arizona's Family.
Okay, Whitney, and we'll continue to monitor that situation. Thanks for that live report. President Trump weighed in.
They are asking that if anyone was in the area of where this happened near 101 and Tatum on early Monday morning, they do want to hear from you. Live from Phoenix, I'm Whitney Clark for Arizona's Family.
Okay, Whitney, and we'll continue to monitor that situation. Thanks for that live report. President Trump weighed in on last night's protest, calling protesters in Minneapolis thugs who are, quote, dishonoring the memory of George Floyd. Now, he also threatened to bring in the National Guard and said, quote, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. That phrase dates back to the 1960s and was used by a police chief in reference to civil rights protests in Miami. The president, however, has walked back that statement throughout the day today.
But Twitter flagged the president's tweet, saying it violates a policy against glorifying violence. It's now hidden, the tweet that is, unless a user chooses to reveal it. The move comes a day after President Trump announced an executive.
Well, it's the question on so many of your minds. Kids are set to go back to school in the fall, but what will that look like exactly, and is it safe? For a couple Valley school districts, a shorter school week seems to be the answer. A major decision coming out of Alhambra and Cartwright school districts.
It is going to affect our entire community, our school, our parents, our students.
They're transitioning to a 4-day week in the fall.
Findings that support a diagnosis of traumatic asphyxia or strangulation. Mr. Floyd had underlying health conditions, including coronary artery disease and hypertensive heart disease. The combined effects of Mr. Floyd being restrained by the police, his underlying health conditions, and any potential intoxicants in his system likely contributed to his death. What's your response? Are you concerned about the implication of any of this, what he wrote?
I'm highly concerned. When you have a coroner, more than likely he is a coroner that has the police officer knee on Mr. Floyd's neck, and Mr. Floyd is saying, "I can't breathe." In fact, in the statement of probable cause, the statement says that Mr. Floyd had indicated prior to that time, had told the police officers that he couldn't breathe when he was standing beside the police cruiser. Now, Derek Chauvin pulled him out of the vehicle. Mr. Floyd fell, and then we saw the officer put a knee to his neck. We saw two other officers in that third video. One is on his back, and one is holding his legs down. And that in itself shows that when Mr. Floyd is saying that he can't breathe, shows that there is some type of inhibition of oxygen getting to his lungs or to his brain that would inhibit him from being able to breathe. So, yeah, we see asphyxiation. Yes, we see strangulation. So the coroner report is flawed.
So the obvious follow-up question to that is an independent autopsy. Are you going to conduct one or demand one at least?
The family will be demanding a independent autopsy. It is paramount that an independent autopsy be conducted. And I tell you why.
Did we lose her?
It seems that being presented.
Can you start that over because we lost you, Ms. Powell-Lexing?
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I say we see the same old typical reports from coroners that work directly with the police department. When you have the coroner working directly with the police department, you're going to get the same type of reports that's trying to exonerate police officers from
his ex-wife's attorney or his wife's attorney, soon to be ex-wife. Okay, so it says in a statement from the Sakula Family Law Office, an attorney for Kelly Chauvin, the wife of ex-Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, has filed for a dissolution of marriage. Here's the quote. It says, "This evening I spoke with Kelly Chauvin and her family. She is devastated by Mr. Floyd's death, and her utmost sympathy lies with his family, with his loved ones, and with everyone who is grieving this tragedy. She has filed for dissolution of marriage to Derek Chauvin," the statement said. Excuse me. While Ms. Chauvin has no children from her current marriage, she respectfully requests that her children, her elder parents, and her extended family be given safety and privacy during this difficult time. Again, Derek Chauvin was arrested today, charged with third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter in the death of George Floyd. His wife has now filed for divorce, dissolution of marriage, which is a divorce. So protesters now in Minneapolis ignoring a curfew order tonight as outrage spreads over the death of George Floyd. I want to bring in now the owner of a nightclub where both George Floyd and the fired Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin worked. So joining me now is Maya Santamaria. She's the owner of El Nuevo Rodeo, the club in South Minneapolis. Also, I want to note that we have reached out to Derek Chauvin's attorney for a comment on all of this, but we have not heard back. Maya, you saw that video.
I was horrified. I was absolutely horrified. And my heart really goes out to the Floyd family. He was very loved in this city. This is a very tight-knit community. And there's just a disconnect between the community that is here in Minneapolis and the cops.
Yeah. So Earlier today, you said that you sensed that Chauvin felt afraid when he was around African American men. What makes you say that? Tell me about that.
You know, Don, I was in a lot of interesting situations with him through 17 years of running a club where we had urban nights and different nights. And that was just my instinct, because there were times when there were little altercations and I wanted to, talk to people and feel them out and comprehend what the situation was. And he would go right into measures that were more, police activity, pulling out the pepper spray, wanting to call for backups. And so that was just my truth, that I felt that there were other ways of relating to people.
What did you think of that?
I did have a few words with him on a couple of occasions, but police always have a way of defending themselves in those situations. But he was an authority figure.
Tell me, okay, he wasn't, but tell me about those conversations. What you said you had a few words with him. Share, whatever you can share. What did you say? How did that conversation go?
Something like, why did you have to spray everyone mace? If there was a couple of people fighting, you could have just apprehended them. Why do you have to spray everyone, whether they were involved or not? And, why have so many backups come when we can just handle it ourselves?
And he didn't do that when there were other people in the club who weren't African American?
I'm not going to say he never had issues with our customers, but I know that he felt more comfortable with the Latino community than he did with some of our urban crowd that we would get with different promotions.
Again, we reached out to him for comment on this, as well as the dissolution of marriage from his wife. We have not heard back from Derek Chauvin or any representative of Derek Chauvin. Thank you very much, Maya Santamaria.
We see right now is a breaking point here in front of the White House. The shields are often an indication for pockets of more angry people to come and test the shields. If they're barriers, they test the barriers. Now, the challenge for police and what you're watching right now is, what do you do with the people you're wrestling with? What do you do? They want your shields. If you surrender your shield, it's going to be used as a weapon. If you want to open up and detain the people who are attacking you, you're going to create an overflow situation and a breach in the phalanx.
They've been surrendering the barricades and allowing these. They're fighting for them, but after a while they say, listen, just take it.
And they bring more barricades.
Right.
Because again, you can call it de-escalation, but it's also tactical. They are incredibly outnumbered. And the dynamic is often manufactured, Don. We have to give some credence to the reality on the ground, as you know, and anybody who's covered these in different situations. You see a lot of brown faces right now, and there are a lot of brown faces on the ground, but they're not all brown faces. And when you look more often than not at who is right up in the face of police, you'll see a lot of white faces. And sometimes they're organized, sometimes they're members of groups, sometimes they are frequenters of these, and they are agitating, and they're looking for provocation. Sometimes they're allies. Sometimes they're just hypersensitized and angry. So not every situation is the same. And you see that again and again in different cities. So now there's spray coming from the officers, probably a retardant spray, a pepper spray, or something of that, which is a deterrent. And we'll see what that does to the crowd. And this is repeating itself in cities all across this country in cycles of movement. This is the White House. We could show you Minneapolis. We could show you Denver. We could show you Los Angeles. We could show you Brooklyn, New York. We've seen these scenes. Why? Because the issues that underlie it are repeatable. This is Los Angeles. We watched an officer early this night take a solid beating from various members of a crowd as he was trying to detain somebody. Now, the question becomes, Don, what takes this situation to the next level of process, and what will that process be? That's the question that we don't have the answer to yet.
Yeah. Listen, you point out something that is very astute, that there's a strategy behind what these police departments do, and I've been noticing the difference from city to city as to how the police departments handle this. They should probably all have very similar training, but it is obvious that they use that training in different ways. as we look at the pictures happening in Los Angeles. Some of the officers engage, and others don't. They show incredible restraint. And I have to say that the officers that are standing out there in front of the White House and Lafayette Park in Washington, D.C. have shown incredible restraint with people who are coming into their faces, yelling at them, and trying to pull barricades and even throwing objects at them. So it's an interesting back and forth that we have been watching play out. I do have to say, Chris, that I think that I know, and you know as well, that police departments around this country saw what happened last night and said overnight and this morning and today, that is not going to happen in our city, and we are going to be prepared.
But it's not that easy for them.
Yeah.
You know, they are up against it when it comes to policing in general, let alone situations like this. Now, I know that that is a counter-narrative, that right now what these demonstrations, protests, riots, rebellions, however you wish to characterize them, are focusing on the inequities and the imbalances where minorities in this country are not just disenfranchised, but they feel preyed upon and victimized. But in situations like this,
occupied in a free country in their own neighborhoods, own communities.
And you're right. I hear the language. I understand why people are using it. But in a situation like this, as you and I have been in, I've been in many times in many different parts of the world, the police, there is no upside for them in this situation.
Right.
If you touch anybody, you're going to have emotions run over in a very bad way. You almost can't use your weapons no matter what's going on because you don't want to escalate. But you're getting hurt and injured, and there is huge chunks of time that you have to stand in harm's way.
And Chris, not to mention that we're in the middle of a pandemic, speaking of touching people. Go on.
Look, and it is no small irony in watching these tonight that you're watching people burn cars, attack buildings, attack police, and the whole time they have COVID masks on.
Mm-hmm.
So they are protecting themselves from a virus, ostensibly, while in the middle of what you're watching on your TV screen. How bizarre are a situation we have in our country that during a pandemic, it doesn't work for me. You see people online and other in the media commenting that, why don't they wait until the pandemic's over? Outrage doesn't have patience. The idea that there's a pandemic doesn't change the fact that there is a guttural reaction to a man having a knee on his neck as he begs for his life and then dies. But it is interesting that we're in a time where these people who are out there have masks on to protect themselves from a virus. At the same time, they're protesting that the police don't protect them from others in society. It is just a bizarre reality that we are living through together.
Yeah. And listen, I'm sure people wish that there was some sort of mask or something that would protect them from this other virus that's racism. And perhaps they think that the protest in whatever form they are choosing to engage, whether it's peaceful or whether
they're bored with their position, maybe they're getting tired because the numbers have just dissipated to some extent in this area.
All right, Mike, we will check back with you as we continue our extended coverage here. Thank you very much for your updates and facts there on the ground. We want to recap for people. Correspondent Alex Hogan is in New York, going to bring us up to the minute with what's happening in New York and beyond, because this is spread across the country tonight. Good evening, Alex.
Protective gear on, and then they donned riot gear just about 30 minutes ago. It does not look like things are getting any better at this hour. It is still very tense. We're keeping a close eye on it. By the way, the president is at the White House tonight. We'll let you know if things get worse outside of the north side of the White House. Meantime, after 3 nights of violent demonstrations, which culminated in the arson of a police station in Minneapolis, the Twin Cities are under a curfew, but it's accomplishing little. Few police were out tonight. They seem to just be backing off. That seems to be the posture. In Minneapolis, this is the scene. And the governor imposing an 8 p.m. curfew, and that has been completely ignored following days of looting, rioting, and destruction of buildings and cars. In Atlanta, what started out as a peaceful protest turned into a riot. Bottled water, eggs, other objects hurled at police, windows shattered, graffiti sprayed all over the CNN building, and then an escalation of violence as protesters torched police cars and then broke into the front of the CNN World Center in Atlanta. In the midst of the protests, Atlanta's mayor demanding for the destruction to stop and for people to go home.
You're not honoring the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement. You're not protesting anything, running out with brown liquor in your hands, breaking windows in this city. T.I. and Killer Mike own half the West Side. So when you burn down this city, you're burning down our community. You are disgracing our city. You are disgracing the life of George Floyd and every other person who has been killed in this country. We're better than this as a city. We are better than this as a country. Go home. Go home.
She is not alone. These same sentiments were echoed by Andrew Young, the very popular former mayor of Atlanta, who said basically the same thing tonight, that this is not helping the cause. Dozens of people have been arrested. For the latest on stories like this, make sure you download the AZAM Morning Brief. You can
Looks like those LAPD officers now moving these protesters along in one solid line there. And again, this was closing down parts of the downtown area earlier at City Hall, at one point closing down the 110 at Wilshire. We're going to keep an eye on this situation. Let's take you to the epicenter of where this all began after the death of George Floyd on Monday night. We're talking about Minneapolis. Protests have not only spread throughout Minneapolis, they've spilled over into St. Paul, into the small suburbs of Cottage Grove, you name it. There has been some places that have been lit on fire over the past 48 to 72 hours. This is now night 4. A curfew citywide has been put into effect. Thousands have defied that order. Governor Tim Walz has called out the National Guard yesterday. They have in Oakland. This is the Interstate 880 in Oakland. Look at the police units, Jared, on the bottom part of your screen starting to arrive here. Interstate 880 in Oakland now shut down from protesters. It looks like this is the overpass near the 8. Now look at the protesters in front of that police unit. This is going to turn ugly quickly here. So it looks like protests continue not only here in the Oakland Bay area, San Jose. We showed you what the situation was in downtown Los Angeles. Jared, we've been hearing about protests in Las Vegas, in downtown Denver, Colorado, Columbus, Ohio, Richmond, Virginia, downtown Des Moines, my home state. There were reports of looting near Court Street in downtown Des Moines. Now let's take you back to Los Angeles.
More face-offs here between protesters and police, and seen as you were going around the country. We were live watching a lot of footage come in from Louisville last night, in Kentucky, and a reporter was actually shot with pepper balls tonight covering that scene in Louisville. So a lot going on in a lot of different cities. Where are we going, Sean?
This is Minneapolis. It looks like another fire has broken out. Apparently, what has happened is the picture is blurred because it looks like at one point a swear word has been written on the side of one of those buildings. So we obviously don't want to get that language on air, and that's one of the reasons why that picture was blurred. We're taking you back now to downtown LA. Police kind of standing there, holding the line, talking with those protesters, trying to get them to move off several of the streets in the downtown area down near City Hall. And again, we were talking about problems earlier tonight at the Wilshire entrance to the 110 freeway.
Yeah, and there are other protests going on in kind of the shopping districts. They're showing pictures of large crowds outside of a Whole Foods store at 7th and Grand in downtown Los Angeles, in addition to apparently they're saying 2 spots on the 110, 2 spots are seeing these clashes between the protesters and police.
Earlier tonight, we showed you video of protesters just outside of the White House. The White House was put on lockdown. Protesters gathered in, of course, historic Lafayette Park. Those were the scenes of protests dating all the way back through the Vietnam War and earlier in our nation's history. We showed signs of protesters clashing with Secret Service members in Washington, D.C. as unrest continues to roll out across America tonight on Friday. We have been monitoring Okay, it looks like we want to try to go to the Arizona State Capitol, where Arizona protesters now trying to work on tearing down that temporary fence that was put up by the state earlier tonight at the state Capitol complex.
This was done, you know, just as a precaution because the DPS really heard that there was a potential for a protest there tonight and through the weekend. But, you know, we saw hundreds of people out there last night. We're seeing, what, 4 people out of the hundreds who came out. And look at all the people who were behind Whitney's live shot 10 minutes ago. All those peaceful, quiet people out there to make a point. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4 people who are actually causing some destruction at the Capitol, ripping down the fence.
All right, we're going to continue to keep on the situation here at the Arizona State Capitol complex. Of course, DPS in charge of security. Earlier, about 10 minutes ago, Jared, we saw a couple of DPS troopers and their patrol units arriving at the state Capitol. I'm sure they're going to keep a close eye on what is happening there with these protesters. Again, not a lot of protesters, but we will continue to monitor this situation, not only here in the Valley, but all across the country on this busy Friday night.
To the right of me to leave, but they are not leaving. There is a small group here with signs yelling profanities and trying to instigate what is going on in front of the state Capitol. These troopers are standing firm in their right there behind this fence. Again, the captain of DPS has ordered them to leave, but the shouting is not stopping anytime soon. Now, it looks like they've retreated just a little bit. Looks like the protesters are retreating. Again, DPS troopers came out of the House of Representatives fully decked out in riot control gear. They picked the fence back up and they ordered people to leave this area. And again, you can see people just retreating a little bit over on this way, but we're going to keep on top of the scene. We have heard that some protesters from other parts of Phoenix are coming to this area. Again, we're going to wait on that and see how much bigger this protest gets.
Yeah, we are cutting David's audio off. There's been a lot of swear words, cuss words being thrown about back LA City Hall there in the background there. We haven't heard, or at least I haven't heard, Jared, of that force-wide tactical alert. That is a phrase used back in the Rodney King days.
Yeah, and at least 1 officer hurt there, if not 2, and a number of people being detained and arrested in Los Angeles. Here's again a live picture from the Bay Area, the Oakland area. They have seen protests and demonstrations in several cities up in Northern California throughout the afternoon into the evening. This is a huge crowd there, and we're trying to figure out exactly what's happening, where they're trying to go, what they're trying to do in the Oakland area tonight, but it's just, I mean, it's difficult to get information about what is going on in real time there.
I was just checking the San Francisco Chronicle, the front page of the iconic newspaper up there for the Bay Area. They're saying that Oakland protesters, they took over portions of Interstate 880. San Jose police have been forced to deploy tear gas, and they've been firing rubber bullets at the protesters. And of course, the protests in San Jose, that's been going on since you were on the air at 4 o'clock.
That's right. If we can, let's go back to Minneapolis, because this is really where it all began on Monday, and it appears another night in a row the city is on fire. Part of the city is on fire. We watched several buildings burn 2 nights ago, including a low-income housing
has been ransacked. Several stores have been looted, and you can see now fires are being set across Minneapolis tonight. And Jared, these folks are basically ignoring the governor's curfew orders.
Right, that curfew went into effect just about 3 hours ago or so in Minneapolis. Huge crowds, though, in different parts of the city tonight. And among the buildings on fire, we're told there's at least 1 restaurant on fire, a convenience store on fire, and at one point, a group of the protesters took over a delivery truck, which appeared to be a UPS truck, and set all the boxes in the back of the truck on fire as well.
All right, let's take you over to the in nearby San Jose, and those protests were happening in the early parts of the afternoon. Now more fireworks and flashbangs continuing to go off. We're not sure if this is efforts by the police to try to get that crowd to disperse.
Yeah, for the last couple hours at least, there have been a number of reports that people in the crowd have been setting off fireworks, and then the police department would respond with tear gas, which it appears that's exactly what's happening here. You see the sparks from the fireworks, and now there are clouds from the gas in that area.
All right, we're coming at the bottom of the hour here at 9:30 on your Friday night. We've got to step aside for a quick commercial break. We have team coverage of the unrest unfolding across America on this Friday night, as well as across the valley. There are multiple protests that have happened here in the valley. We've got live team coverage coming up next.
Arizona is the first state to file a lawsuit against Google. Now, the state attorney general's office is still trying to figure out exactly how many Arizonans may have been tracked without knowing it. The state of Arizona filing a consumer fraud lawsuit against Google. The state attorney general, Mark Brnovich, and his team allege the search engine company is illegally collecting location data to profit in their online advertising.
We allege, and what we have found, is that Google makes a lot of its money actually from online advertising. In fact, more than 80%. So Google uses all of this information that it collects on you, where you go, where you live, where you work, your dentist, your grocery store, favorite restaurant, you name it. And he uses all of this information to then advertise and to show you ads.
The lawsuit claims Google is tracking users' locations even when they had disabled the tracking settings. Because of this, they're seeking money to repay Arizonans.
Well, it's important for companies to be forthright about what they're doing. They need to be very forthright about when they're collecting your information. And also the consumers need to be able to opt in and say, yes, you can collect my information, but they also need to make it very easy to opt out of location tracking.
The attorney general first looking into this in 2018 after the Associated Press reported that Google is tracking users even after they opted out of that setting. So they say the main goal here is to hold that company accountable. What
is split on the president's executive order. Democratic commissioners say it would turn the agency into the president's speech police, while Republicans say protections should be re-examined. In Washington, Lauren Blanchard, Fox News.
Well, the president's had a lot of bad news, but he got some good news today from a professor from Stony Brook University, the guy who predicted the president's victory in 2016. And he thinks President Trump will win re-election again in November. The president says the key to looking at this is what happened in the primaries, where Donald Trump turned out a lot of voters and easily won the primaries. Yes, he wasn't opposed, but he got big numbers when nothing was really on the line. And he says Joe Biden kind of struggled for a while in the process. The professor's model shows President Trump with a 91% chance of being reelected.
Emma, this is Becky. All right, take a hold of your emergency brake and just gradually pull that a little bit and see if it slows you down at all. Emma, does it?
This was scary. A 911 dispatcher who is just a hero, trying to calmly help a 20-year-old driver whose car would not stop. The driver called 911 saying her brakes were failing. She could not slow the car down. State troopers in Ohio surrounded her car while the dispatcher talked her through the process of applying the emergency brake to stop, and it worked perfectly. Everybody's fine. In Chicago, a girl managed to accomplish something quite remarkable, earning a master's degree. She's only 14 years old. This is Dorothy Jean Tillman, graduated from Unity College with a master's degree in science and environmental planning. She started talking at 8 months old and then was doing advanced math by 4. She started taking online high school classes when she was 9. She chose environmental engineering because she loves helping people and the environment. Wow. Well, she just made the rest of us feel completely inferior.
Set it on fire. There you go. You're seeing right there, and that stuff is potent. It will make your eyes sting, make you cry. Really, really potent stuff. People are running into it, but they're also firing rubber bullets as well.
Watch out, Sarah. The canisters are right on your heels.
Unable. Okay, watch it, watch it. There's some behind you. There are a lot of folks with their eyes all red walking through this. It is very strong, very potent. Sometimes it's smoke bombs, but for the most part, we are seeing lots of tear gas here, Chris. And they're really just trying to move people away from the 5th precinct. It doesn't seem that they're going much further than creating a barricade for the 5th precinct there. I can tell you right now, we saw fireworks set directly at the 5th precinct, and it caught part of it on fire. We're just not sure exactly where that fire was, but it is definitely near or on the building there of the 5th precinct.
All right, Sarah.
He's holding what has been fired by officers. I have also seen several of those at the 3rd precinct.
F12.
As well. So where did you get that? Did you pick that up from the street?
It hit me in the leg right over there, right in front of that car. Okay. It was like, boop, and I picked it up.
Did it hit you?
Right on the back of the leg. They must have shot it from all the way down the block.
So you basically are running back. What did you see? You see a line. Do you see how many officers?
I heard that they were coming from that side and from behind Kmart. So they were trying to flank us. So basically, everyone started running, and I had my exit strategy. And so, I had to escape with my bros, north side.
Thank you so much.
Told that, and there was hope that there would be more control tonight with the National Guard brought in, with the announcement that the officer who was seen with his knee on the neck of George Floyd has been arrested on murder charges, manslaughter charges. We're told more charges may be coming, and for additional officers as well. It doesn't seem, Mike, that that's been enough to quell the passion and the unrest tonight.
Certainly not. And I want to update, we were talking about the new fire that had started off in the background there, where you can see the flames are really leaping out of the front of that building. It's not the Chinese restaurant that we thought it was, just from that vantage point. What that building in that area, there's a rental agency, there's a tobacco store, and there's a MoneyGram store on there. Wow, those flames are really coming out. So that was a fire that was just black smoke with a little bit in the way of leaping flames. But as we're talking now, that the heat, the intensity has increased dramatically, and as we're standing here watching it, the flames are just leaping out of that building. Now, about a block away from here, we did see some police presence show up. That's what we were talking about in the last live shot. We watched that a group of law enforcement work their way up the street. What we don't see right now is any law enforcement in this particular area. I'm getting some unconfirmed reports that the Guard is in this area, but I'm not seeing it. All I'm seeing is the angry mob. And now here's something that's interesting. As that building is burning, it's attracting a lot of attention. You see the kids are showing up now with their phones out, trying to get the video and put that stuff up on Instagram. Wow, there's a car going right next to the fire, and absolutely not too concerned about the danger that fire brings. It's obviously the heat is intense when you have flames leaping out of it like that. But the kids are running around, they're starting fires, they're looting the Office Max, they're looting the dollar store, and up to this point, we've seen really just a small number of cops out here doing anything about it. Janet?
All right, Mike, please keep us updated, and we'll check back with you as that situation continues to unfold there in Minneapolis. We want to take you back to the White House, where Leland has been reporting on a very raucous crowd. Leland, we want to make sure that you're okay there. Tell me, because I know that you said that there are more officers on the scene now. This is directly outside of the White House. That's what's right behind you over your shoulder. But what about the crowd? Can you tell us, has it grown? Has it dissipated at all as we're now almost nearing 1 a.m. here on the East Coast outside the White House?
Yeah, you can probably see me looking around and keeping my head on a swivel here. The crowd maybe in numbers hasn't necessarily grown, but in intensity and anger is kind of grown. And if you cover these things enough, you get a sense of who's looking for trouble and who's not. Earlier, may have miscalculated that a little bit in terms of being able to interview people and try to talk to them. It's part of the problem of trying to hear what people's grievances are and talk to them versus just hearing these really angry rants. As we look there now, this is the standoff between the Secret Service and what's left of the people who have survived about 6 or 7 hours out here, the shield. And the protesters seem to have gotten a little bit smarter out here now, because they outnumber the officers, and the officers have to sort of match them one for one across this bicycle barricade. So if the protesters spread all the way out here, and if they the protesters go ahead and frame up on me, and if the protesters are able to fan all the way out here, they may be able to get over some of these bicycle barricades. There's no way they're getting into the White House. You've got about 15 or 20 feet, and then you've got the 15-foot high White House fence that has now been completed. So, Shannon, now it's up to the protesters, really. The Secret Service isn't going anywhere. And unlike anywhere else, this is a stand that they are going to make. They have drawn a line in the pavement here between the bricks of Lafayette Park and the pavement of Pennsylvania Avenue. And these protesters seem to be able to chant whatever they want, throw firecrackers at the Secret Service, but they're not going over this fence anytime tonight. Shannon?
Yeah, that is the point of a protest, to be able to, in this beautiful country of ours, to say your piece, to make your voice heard. Only law enforcement there, the Secret Service guarding the White House, will have to make the call. Whether they even begin any arrests, which thus far they have been pretty restrained, and as far as we can tell, that hasn't happened. All right, we want to do a round robin tonight with our brave reporters there who are on the ground and seeing all kinds of things tonight. Jonathan, give us a recap in Atlanta, and then we'll work back through Mike and Leland before we end our 2-hour coverage, which will continue. Let's check in with Jonathan in Atlanta.
Yeah, Shannon, we started out at CNN Center near Centennial Park, where there was looting taking place at CNN Center. What's happening now is police have been moving a larger and larger perimeter outside that central downtown tourist area. Right now we're on Forsyth Street, and you can see that there's another standoff between police maintaining that perimeter about 5 or 6 blocks from CNN Center, and then protesters who are at times shouting expletives at them. So far, things here remain peaceful, but a far cry from earlier this evening when we saw people protesters hurling bottles and other objects at the police, even launching some fireworks into the police, and then police responding with tear gas, which is what finally dispersed the crowd from that very concentrated and very volatile area just outside CNN Center. Shannon, back to you.
All right, Jonathan, thank you very much. And our coverage will continue through the night. Jonathan is there. Let's now go to Mike Tobin, who has seen a lot in the last 2 or 3 nights. Mike, give us an assessment of what you've seen throughout tonight and where we are now in Minneapolis.
The State Patrol are on the ground, as well as local police. What we saw from this vantage point was local police trying to secure the situation. But the situation, I can tell from this vantage point, we have 3 fires that I can see. There's that, it's a tobacco, it's a rental agency, it's a MoneyGram building with the flames leaping out of the front window. Obviously a very intense, hot fire. And as we go off in this direction to screen left, you can see the Wells Fargo Bank branch. That is got smoke billowing out of it, and just past it you can see some flames. I'm going to have to assume that is the same fire. It could be a 4th fire, and if we continue to go to screen left, I can show you just what's going to look on your screen like a bunch of black smoke, and that is the U.S. Post Office at 31st and 1st. So 3 fires in this area, a small police presence. As we look back down onto Lake Street, you can see a lot of people just milling about and looking at the fires as the flames.
But they gathered peacefully at East Lake Park to protest the shooting death of Deon Johnson. That happened on the 101 in Tatum early Monday morning. But now they are starting to throw objects at police officers in front of Phoenix PD.
Brianna Whitney is live near the scene. Let's bring her in. I think she's on a bit of a delay, just as a warning. But Brianna, what can you tell us?
Hey, guys. Okay, guys, so things have ramped up and escalated in a matter of minutes here at the Phoenix PD headquarters. All of these protesters came from just east at a park for a Deon Johnson rally and have now come here in front of the Phoenix PD headquarters. They immediately started tearing down the fences that police put up and throwing water bottles and all sorts of things at the police officers. And that's when immediately officers came out of the building with their riot gear on and started firing these flash grenades into the crowd. I can tell that a lot of them are going off. You can see people coughing. I can feel it in my throat. People are starting to feel this, and now they're saying we should keep walking to protest. So there's really a chaotic scene out here. As you can see, everybody just coughing, eyes are watering, including my own, as this protest continues. So this was very quiet here just 2 hours ago. All of these protesters coming from another protest against the Department of Public Safety and here to the Phoenix PD headquarters. So we're going to stay out here. Obviously, these people are angry. They are throwing things at officers, and officers are not messing around tonight. They immediately started shooting off flash grenades, and people are now coughing and running all over the streets angry. So we're going to stay out here bringing you the very latest, but absolutely what started as a quiet night here at the Phoenix PD has turned into a very, very, very volatile situation. Guys, I'll send it back to you.
Brianna, we're going to let her get into a safe zone, let her catch her breath there as she reports live in front of Phoenix Police Department headquarters. We do have another angle of these protesters now with their hands up, holding their hands up in front of Phoenix PD. Again, as Brianna was explaining it, these are protesters from an earlier protest, protesting the death of Dion Johnson. That happened early Monday up at the Loop 101 in Tatum. Those protesters came from East Lake Park, marching west towards the Phoenix Police Department. This just all went off, Jared, a few minutes ago at 9:45, the exact same time 24 hours earlier when the back window of a Phoenix police cruiser was busted out front of the state capitol. Again, 24 hours later, we've got now another protest with protesters clashing with police in front of police headquarters.
Right, and Dion Johnson is a 28-year-old black man who was killed, as you mentioned, on Monday. He's the man, if you might remember, was found asleep by a trooper. He was asleep inside his car on the side of the freeway. Something happened, and he ended up dead. And his mother, we talked to her earlier tonight. She said they're still waiting for answers and an explanation as to how that situation escalated. Scene, it's been interesting to watch this because Whitney Clark, our reporter at the park, with a large crowd not 45 minutes ago, it was calm, it was quiet, it was peaceful, it was respectful. Demonstrators, protesters were out there making a point. They had signs, they were chanting, giving some speeches, but it was nothing like this. And then they marched over the past 45 minutes. Some of them from the park marched through downtown Phoenix, came up onto Washington Street, and now they've gathered here in front of the police department, which last night sustained some damage very late at night. Today, the officers seem to be prepared for this, ready for the potential for something like this. They had the barricades set up earlier this evening, and you could tell those officers were prepared inside in their gear, inside waiting just in case this happened. And indeed they were, because as soon as they came outside, people in this crowd started lobbing stuff at them. Right. I don't know if they were water bottles or rocks or what it was, but these officers responded immediately, tossing something akin to tear gas or pepper balls, something along those lines, into the crowd.
Yeah, Brianna, Whitney described them as flash grenades. A lot of time it's the sound.
Matter of minutes as all these protesters came down from the Dion Johnson protest here to the Phoenix PD headquarters.
You know, we took away Brianna's audio there because of some swear words being coming from the crowd there. All right, let's listen in again.
So, obviously, a lot of grenades are going off now. They consistently keep putting off flash grenades. There's pepper spray that is going out, and people are coughing. All in riot gear, standing in a very strong line. There's probably 3 dozen of them in a row with the shields on, ready, and they're not messing around tonight. So you can see here, everybody has just scattered on Washington Street, right in front of the PD headquarters. And I know you can hear that. That was an all call that they're putting out saying, this is the Phoenix Police Department, disperse immediately. So they've obviously are calling this an assembly. They want everybody to get out of the street and out of this area immediately. That's the all call that you're still hearing. So, I mean, gosh, we're looking at probably 1,000 people at least down here, which really came from nowhere, walking down from downtown east to west. And now this seems to be just a very ramped up situation. Tensions are escalated. We're hearing chants, justice for Dion, which is the man that they were all having a vigil for up the street. We're also hearing hands up, don't shoot for George Floyd. So this has turned into a multiple person protest. All of the protests that were going on down around the downtown Phoenix area have now combined here right in front of Phoenix PD headquarters. We've got people over here who have just knocked down a trash can. So people are still angry tonight for day 2. And even though Phoenix police officers are asking people to leave, it does not appear that people are going anywhere anytime soon. So we're going to stay on top of this here and bring you the very latest as this protest tonight seems to only be started. Guys, back to you.
Then it's our Brianna Whitney reporting live from downtown Phoenix in front of Phoenix Police Headquarters. We have another new angle here amid those protests.